Winter did not arrive in Wyoming so much as it claimed the land and refused to give it back. By the final night of the year, the cold had sunk into everything: soil, timber, bone, until even sound seemed brittle. The wind scoured the valley in long white sheets, lifting snow from the ground and flinging it sideways against the cabin walls. Out there, distance meant nothing. Direction meant less. The storm erased, both with patient cruelty. Inside the cabin, the air smelled of wood smoke and boiled cornmeal. Ethan Vance stood at the rough pine table, his sleeves rolled, hands steady as he ladled porridge into a dented tin bowl. One bowl. He always made one. Years ago, habit had hardened into rule. The house had learned how to stay quiet, and he had learned how not to argue with it. The fire burned low but true, its orange light crawling across the log walls and sinking into the cracks where chinking met wood. Shadows leaned and shifted like tired men who had nowhere else to sit. Above, the rafters groaned when the wind found a loose seam and worried it, the sound sharp enough to catch the ear and refuse to let go. New Year's Eve. The words carried no weight out here. There were no bells, no fireworks, no voices counting down toward hope. On the frontier, a year ended the same way it began: cold, indifferent, and unconcerned with whether a man was ready to move forward. Ethan set the bowl on the table and sat. He ate slowly, spoon scraping softly against tin, listening to the storm test the cabin the way it always did, probing, pressing, retreating only to try again somewhere else. Each mouthful tasted the same. Survival had a flavor, and it was bland. When the bowl was empty, he rinsed it in the basin, wiped it dry, and set it upside down on the shelf. The ritual mattered. It marked an ending. Another year closed without ceremony. He reached for his coat to check the door latch when the sound came. Not wind, not timber. A dull, hollow thump like something giving up its weight to the snow, followed by nothing at all. Ethan froze. The old instincts returned before thought had time to catch up. His hand went to the axe resting by the door, fingers finding the worn groove in the handle. Outside, the storm swallowed distance and shape alike. Anything could wander too close on a night like this. Anything desperate enough. He waited. The wind hissed. The fire breathed. Somewhere far off, a pine cracked under ice and settled. Then came another sound, softer this time, almost a scrape. Ethan lifted the lantern and pulled the door open. Cold rushed in like a living thing, clawing at his chest and stealing his breath. Snow piled high on the porch, blown hard enough to sting exposed skin. For a moment, the lantern light showed nothing but white. Then it caught movement near the steps. A shape resolved into a body. A woman lay half-buried where the snow had drifted deepest. Her dark hair was stiff with ice, strands plastered to her cheeks. The dress she wore, ceremonial by the look of the torn beadwork, had been ripped thin by wind and frost. Her feet were bare. The skin of them had turned a frightening shade of blue-red, raw and swollen, the toes rigid as if carved from wax. One hand twitched weakly against the snow, testing whether the world was still there. Ethan knelt, bringing the lantern closer. Her eyes opened when the light touched her face. They were dark and clear, focused enough to be dangerous, and they fixed on him with a steadiness that did not belong to someone so close to the end. "Please," she whispered. The word broke apart in the wind. Just the night. Ethan did not answer. He took in the details the way he always did, when the land presented him with a choice quickly, without embellishment. The shallow rise of her chest, the way her breath caught and stuttered, the certainty in his bones that if he closed the door, the storm would finish what it had started before morning. Behind him, the cabin glowed with firelight and familiarity. Ahead, the storm stretched on without limit or mercy. The year was ending, and standing in front of him was a decision that would decide how the next one began. Ethan set the lantern down and stepped into the snow. The cold cut through his boots at once, sharp and biting. He slid an arm beneath her shoulders and another under her knees, lifting carefully, feeling how little weight there was to her. She made a small sound, more breath than pain, and clutched weakly at his coat. He carried her inside and kicked the door shut with his heel. Warmth closed around them. The fire flared as if in protest, then settled. Ethan laid her near the hearth, not too close, and fed the flames until they caught properly. He pulled every spare blanket from the chest beneath the window, wool first, then canvas, and wrapped her with practiced efficiency. Her shivering came in violent waves, but she did not cry out. He poured water into a tin cup, added salt and a spoon of honey, and waited until her lips parted before touching it to her mouth. She swallowed once, then again. Each breath came thin, but steady enough to argue with the dark. "You're inside," he said, not knowing if she could hear him. "Storm won't take you now." Her eyes opened partway. They tracked the room, the table, the shelf with the single bowl turned upside down, the axe by the door. She watched like someone counting exits. Ethan stepped back, giving her the space she seemed to need as much as warmth. He hung his coat on the peg and set the axe back where it belonged. The cabin settled into its nighttime sounds, fire breathing, timber creaking, wind searching for weakness it would not find. "What's your name?" he asked at last. She took her time. Then, softly, "Lena." "Ethan," he said. She swallowed and tried to sit. He moved before she fell, steadying her with a hand at the shoulder. "Easy," he said. "You don't need to prove anything." Her gaze flicked to the table, to the single-place setting. Understanding passed between them without explanation. "I don't have money," she said, the words careful, practiced. "No food either." "I didn't ask," Ethan replied. Silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable, just honest. Outside, the storm battered the cabin with renewed force, rattling the shutters like a warning. Lena flinched, then forced herself still, jaw set. "You can stay," Ethan said. "Till the weather breaks." Relief came through her eyes first, then her breath. "Just the night," she said, as if repeating a rule she could understand. "That's all," he answered. She nodded and leaned back, exhaustion finally claiming ground it had been denied too long. As the firelight shifted, Ethan noticed the silver at her throat, a simple ring on a cord, worn smooth by years of touch. Not decoration, something older than vanity. "Don't take it," she murmured, eyes closing. "It's all I have left." "I won't," Ethan said. Minutes passed. Maybe more. The wind howled, then softened, then howled again. Ethan cleaned the table and, without thinking, set out a second bowl. He stopped, old habits tugging at him, then left it there anyway. The year bled quietly toward its end, and inside the cabin, two strangers shared a fire, while winter waited to see what would happen next. Warmth returned in cautious stages, like an animal that had been burned once and did not intend to be again. Ethan kept the fire low through the night, feeding it only when the flames threatened to fade. Too much heat too fast could kill what the cold had not. He had learned that lesson long ago on a different winter, with a different body laid too close to the hearth. He did not think of that now. He worked by memory and restraint. Lena lay wrapped in blankets near the fire, her breathing shallow but steady. The violent shivering eased into smaller tremors, then into nothing at all. When her body finally allowed rest, it claimed it fiercely. She slept without moving, lashes dark against skin still pale from cold. Outside, the storm worked itself into a long, angry rhythm. Wind dragged snow across the roof. Ice cracked from the pines and fell in dull, distant thuds. The world beyond the cabin was sealed away, erased down to sound and pressure. Ethan sat in the chair by the door, boots on, coat close at hand. He did not sleep. He listened. Near dawn, Lena stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then sharp with sudden awareness. She tried to sit up and failed, breath catching in her throat. Ethan was at her side before panic could take hold, one hand steady at her shoulder. "Easy," he said. "You're inside." Her gaze moved quickly. Fire, walls, window, door. Her jaw tightened, then loosened. "I remember," she said, voice hoarse. "The light, that was me." She nodded once, accepting the fact without gratitude or fear. Survival did not leave room for either. Ethan brought her water again, warm this time. She drank carefully, as if measuring each swallow against a future she had not yet agreed to believe in. When she finished, she pushed the cup back into his hand. "I don't have anything to pay you with," she said. "I won't ask you to pretend I do." "I didn't bring you in for payment," Ethan replied. She studied his face as if waiting for the condition to follow. When it did not, she looked away. Morning light finally pressed its way through the clouds, pale and thin, turning the snow outside the window a dull, endless white. The storm had weakened, but it had not gone. The wind still moved with intent, carrying cold that cut deeper now that the night had passed. Lena swung her legs off the pallet. Ethan watched her feet carefully. The skin had flushed to a painful red, raw but alive. That mattered more than comfort. "I can stand," she said, anticipating his protest. "I know," he answered. "Doesn't mean you should." She stood anyway, swaying once before finding her balance. Pride held her upright when strength did not. She took one step, then another, testing the floor like ice. When she reached the table, she stopped. There were 2 bowls. She looked at them for a long moment, then at Ethan. "You don't eat alone," she said. "I do," he replied. Most days. She nodded, understanding what that meant, without asking why. She sat slowly and picked up the spoon, hands trembling only slightly now. They ate in silence, the sound of tin against wood loud in the small room. Afterward, Lena insisted on helping. She washed the bowls, folded the blankets she had used, and set them back in the chest beneath the window. She moved with care, but also with intent, as if each small task were a declaration that she belonged to the living. Ethan let her. Help offered too quickly could feel like ownership. He had no wish to claim anything that might one day choose to leave. When the chores were done, she sat near the fire and warmed her feet, careful not to bring them too close. Ethan noticed the way her hands kept returning to the silver ring at her throat, thumb rubbing the worn edge until the motion became unconscious. "Where were you headed?" he asked at last. She did not answer right away. The fire popped, sending sparks up the chimney. Outside, the wind shifted. "I wasn't," she said finally. "I just kept walking. That doesn't last long in weather like this." "It wasn't meant to." He waited. "Silence was not pressure if you let it be. They said I failed them," she continued. "That I couldn't give life. That bad seasons followed me." Ethan's jaw tightened. He said nothing. "They took my shoes at first light," she went on. "Said the cold would decide if they were right." The words were flat, practiced. Pain told often enough learned how to travel light. "They were wrong," Ethan said. She looked at him, then really looked, and something in her expression shifted. Not hope. Recognition. "Maybe," she said. "But wrong people still have power." Outside, a sound carried through the wind, metal striking stone. Then silence. Ethan turned toward the door without thinking. The sound did not repeat. "Did someone follow you?" he asked. "No," Lena said too quickly. Then she corrected herself. "Not closely." Ethan nodded. It was answer enough. "You can stay," he said, "until the weather breaks." She studied him again, searching for the catch. "That's all?" "That's all. That doesn't make me yours." "No," he agreed. "It makes you warm." She smiled once small, surprised, gone as quickly as it came. Later, as the light faded and the storm gathered itself again, Lena stood by the hearth and removed the silver ring from its cord. She held it out to him, palm open. "If I make it through the winter," she said, "I'll give this to you, not as payment." Ethan did not take it. "Keep it," he said. "If you're giving something, let it be because you choose to." She closed her fingers around the ring and nodded. That night, as the wind pressed close and the cabin held, 2 strangers shared a fire and a boundary neither intended to cross without permission. Outside, winter listened. Inside, the year waited. Morning arrived without celebration. The storm had loosened its grip sometime before dawn, not retreating so much as pausing to breathe. Snow lay thick and unmoving across the valley, smoothing the land into something quiet and watchful. The sky hung low and pale, the color of old bone. Winter had not ended, but it had stepped back far enough to allow the world to be seen again. Ethan woke to the sound of movement that was not his own. Lena stood near the window, wrapped in a blanket, her silhouette still and upright against the weak light. She did not turn when he stirred. She watched the valley as if measuring it, the way a person did when deciding whether a place could be survived. "You shouldn't be standing so long," Ethan said. "I needed to know where I am," she replied. He crossed the cabin and stood beside her. From here, the land looked empty, no smoke, no tracks that led anywhere certain. Only snow pressed flat by wind and time. Nothing out there wants you today, he said. That's good, she answered. I don't have much left to offer it. They shared a quiet breath. Not silence, the cabin never allowed that, but something close enough to it. Lena tested her feet again after breakfast. The worst of the frost had passed, leaving soreness and stiffness in its place. She walked slowly, jaw tight, refusing help she did not ask for. Ethan watched without comment. Pain, like trust, was something a person managed themselves. She found a knife hanging by the hearth and held it for a long moment. "May I?" she asked. Ethan nodded. She sat on the bench and drew a section of her long braid forward, fingers steady despite the effort it cost her. The blade flashed once. Hair fell into her lap, dark, heavy, alive. Ethan stiffened. "You don't have to." "I know," she said gently. "This isn't for you." She cut again, shorter this time, until the braid was gone. What remained brushed her shoulders unevenly. She gathered the severed hair, carried it to the hearth, and fed it to the fire. The flames took it without ceremony. "In my mother's house," she said, watching it burn. "We cut what tied us to what no longer held." Ethan said nothing. He understood rituals that did not require witnesses. The rest of the morning passed in quiet work. Ethan split wood. Lena swept the floor, resting when she needed to, insisting when she could. They moved around each other carefully, learning the shape of shared space without claiming it. At midday, Ethan set a pair of wool socks and a heavier coat on the table. "For when you go outside," he said. She looked at them, then at him. "You don't expect me to leave." "I expect winter to change its mind," he replied. "That's all." She smiled faintly and pulled the socks on, wincing once as the fabric brushed tender skin. When she stood, she was steadier than before. "I wasn't lying," she said suddenly. Ethan glanced up. "About what?" "About the child." Her voice did not shake. "They said I failed because I could not give them one. But the truth was, it wasn't me." Ethan straightened slowly. "He knew," she went on. "The man they would have made my husband. He knew the fault was his. When I spoke it, they called it betrayal." Silence followed. Not heavy, final. "They chose a lie that kept order," Ethan said. "Yes," she replied. "And I chose to walk." That night, the temperature dropped again. Winter reminded them it was still in charge. Ethan checked the perimeter before dark, circling the cabin far enough to read the snow. There were tracks. Not close. Not careless. But there. He erased what he could before returning inside. Lena saw his face as soon as he closed the door. "Someone's been here." "Not today," he said. "But close enough." She nodded, her hand drifting to the silver ring at her throat. "I won't hide," she said. "I didn't ask you to." They sat by the fire as darkness pressed against the windows. The flames painted the walls with slow, breathing light. Lena leaned back, exhaustion catching up to the strength she had borrowed all day. "Why did you take me in?" she asked quietly. Ethan did not answer at once. He stared into the fire, watching a knot of wood collapse inward. "Because the door was open," he said at last. "And because closing it would have ended something I wasn't ready to lose again." She absorbed that, eyes steady on his profile. "You lost someone." "Yes." "She died in winter." "Yes." Another pause. "I don't belong to anyone," Lena said. "Not anymore." Ethan nodded. "That's the only way this works." I quuttered. The wind rose outside, but it lacked conviction. It passed over the cabin like a warning rather than a threat. Lena shifted closer to the fire, then hesitated. "May I stay here tonight?" "You already are," Ethan replied. That seemed to surprise her. She smiled, small, tired, real. Outside, the valley held its breath. Inside, something fragile but deliberate took shape. Not ownership, not promise, but the quiet understanding that two people who had survived winter might choose, together, what came next. And for the first time since the storm began, the cabin felt less like shelter and more like a place that remembered who was inside it. The cold returned in a quieter way. It did not arrive with wind or noise, but with the kind of stillness that crept into joints and lingered there, reminding a body that winter was not finished negotiating. The sky stayed pale and distant. A thin sheet of light stretched tight across the valley. Snow no longer moved unless touched. Ethan stepped outside before breakfast, axe over his shoulder, breath rising in steady clouds. The storm had weakened the cabin more than he liked. The north lean-to sagged under the weight of ice, and the roofline above it had begun to bow. Not enough to fail, but enough to become a promise of future trouble. He planted his boots and studied the damage the way he studied land before setting a trap. Carefully, without complaint. Behind him, the door creaked. Lena stood on the threshold, wrapped in his spare coat. It hung long on her frame, the sleeves swallowing her hands. She watched him work, without speaking. "You're fixing it," she said after a moment. "Yes. Now?" she asked. "In this cold?" Ethan wedged the axe into a stump and leaned on the handle. "If I wait, it gets worse. For a few days," she pressed. "Until the weather breaks?" He shook his head. "Not for a few days." Understanding moved across her face slowly, like light crossing snow. "You don't repair something that's meant to be temporary." "No," he agreed. She stepped down onto the packed snow, careful with her footing. "Then let me help." Ethan glanced at her feet. The socks and boots fit well enough, but he still saw tenderness in the way she shifted her weight. "You shouldn't," he said. She lifted her chin. "I didn't ask what I should do." He studied her for a long moment, then handed her a coil of rope. "Hold this steady." They worked without speaking. Lena learned his rhythm quickly: when to pull, when to wait, when to step back. Snow slid from the roof in quiet sheets, thudding softly around them. A beam straightened. A joint tightened. The cabin changed by inches, but those inches mattered. By midday, the cold worked its way through gloves and bone. They went back inside, stamping snow from their boots. Lena set water to boil and cut bread without being asked. Ethan watched her move through the space, taking care not to crowd her, noticing how naturally she found places to stand and rest. "This feels different," she said suddenly. Ethan looked up from the fire. "Different how?" "Like a place that expects me to be here tomorrow." He did not answer right away. He fed another log into the hearth and watched the flame take. "I don't build things I can't stand to lose," he said at last. She nodded. "I don't stay where I can be sent away." Silence settled between them, thick, but not hostile. The kind that followed truth spoken without armor. That afternoon, Ethan brought out spare planks and began framing a small partition near the back wall. Nothing elaborate, just enough to mark a space that was hers. Lena watched for a time, then stepped forward. "Let me," she said, taking the hammer from his hand. Their fingers brushed. The contact was brief, unremarkable, and it stayed with him longer than it should have. She worked slowly, carefully, measuring twice before driving each nail. When the wall was finished, the cabin felt changed. Not larger, defined. As dusk approached, a tension crept back into the air. Ethan noticed it first: the way sound carried too far, the way the valley seemed to lean in. He stepped outside to check the perimeter. The tracks were clearer now. Boot prints near the tree line. Careful, deliberate, close enough to watch without being seen. Ethan erased what he could, jaw set. When he returned inside, Lena read his face before he spoke. "They're near," she said. "Not close," he replied. "Yet," she nodded, fingers brushing the silver ring at her throat. "I won't run. If you can take it. I didn't ask you to." That night, they ate quietly. The fire burned steady, its light warm against the encroaching dark. Lena sat near the new wall, testing the space with her presence. "If this changes," she said softly, "tell me before the door closes." Ethan met her gaze. "On my terms," he said. She held his eyes. "On mine too," he nodded. "Good." Later, as the fire burned low, Lena stood by the window, looking out at the moonlit snow. Ethan joined her, close enough to share warmth, but not assumption. Whatever waited beyond the ridge would come in its own time. For now, the cabin stood firm, and inside it, something was being built that neither winter nor fear had managed to tear apart yet. The night passed without incident, but it left Ethan with the uneasy sense that winter had merely shifted its weight. He rose before dawn, the habit of vigilance etched too deeply to ignore. The cabin was quiet, except for the low murmur of the fire settling into embers. Lena slept behind the new partition, her breathing slow and even. Ethan paused there for a moment, long enough to confirm that she was warm, that the world had not reached in and taken something else while he rested, then pulled on his coat and stepped outside. The cold met him like an old adversary. Not sharp, not sudden, patient. Snow lay untouched across most of the valley, a smooth white skin broken only by the fence line and the dark rise of the pines. Ethan followed the perimeter with care, eyes scanning for disturbance. Near the tree line, where the ground dipped and the wind had scoured the surface thinner, he found it. Tracks, boot prints. 3, maybe 4 different sets. Not hurried, not careless. Whoever had been there knew how to move through winter without announcing themselves. Ethan crouched, brushing snow aside with a gloved hand. The impressions were a day old at most. Close enough to watch, close enough to wait. He erased what he could, dragging branches and scattering loose snow, though he knew it was a temporary kindness at best. Tracks were messages. Even erased ones carried meaning. By the time he returned to the cabin, the sky had lightened to a dull gray. Lena was awake, sitting at the table with a cup of water cradled in both hands. She looked up as he entered, reading his expression before he spoke. "They were here," she said quietly. "Near," Ethan replied. "Not last night." She nodded, her fingers tightening around the cup. "They won't stop." "No," he agreed. "But they won't rush either." She took a slow breath, steadying herself. "I don't want to disappear again." "You won't," he said. The certainty surprised him, but he did not take it back. As the morning wore on, Ethan noticed small things he would have dismissed under other circumstances. Lena pushed her breakfast away after only a few bites. The smell of bacon turned her pale. She rested her hand against the table, as if the room had shifted slightly out of balance. "You're still healing," he said, watching her closely. "Yes," she replied. Then, after a pause, "But this feels different." He waited. "My body feels occupied," she said, choosing the word with care. "Like something is insisting." The thought landed gently, without the violence of revelation. Ethan did not reach for conclusions. Winter had taught him not to celebrate too early. "It could be the cold," he said. "Storms do strange things." "I know," she answered. "But I know myself too." They let the possibility sit between them without naming it. No promises, no fear, just awareness. Later, Lena crossed to the window, staring toward the distant river valley where the trading post lay hidden beyond the ridge. "There's someone I want to send word to," she said. "Not them, just one person." "Who?" Ethan asked. "My mother's sister," Lena replied. "If she's still alive." Ethan nodded. "We can leave a message." They wrote it together, short, careful, stripped of detail. No names, no locations, just proof of breath and intention. "I survived the winter. I am not alone." Ethan folded the note and tucked it into the lining of his coat. He left before midday, taking the long way through the trees, mindful of the tracks he had seen. The journey was uneventful, but the tension followed him like a second shadow. At the trading post, voices quieted when he entered. A man behind the counter studied him too closely, eyes lingering a moment too long. "Hard winter," the man said. "Harder for some," Ethan replied. He left the note where it would be found only by someone who knew to look, then returned the same way he had come, checking his back trail twice. Lena was waiting when he arrived, relief softening her features at the sight of him. "Someone's asking questions," Ethan said as he shrugged out of his coat. "Not your name, but close enough." She absorbed that, then nodded. "Thank you for taking the message." 18. That evening, as the light faded and the fire took on its steady glow, Ethan placed a small bundle on the table, a strip of red cloth, neatly folded. "They left this at the post," he said. Lena's breath caught. She unfolded it slowly, recognizing the weave, the pattern. Her fingers trembled as she pressed it to her chest. "She remembers," Lena whispered. "She's alive." Outside, the wind shifted, carrying distant sounds up the valley, voices, faint but unmistakable. Ethan stood, listening. "They're closer now," Lena said. "Yes," he replied. "But so are we." She met his gaze, something resolute settling in her expression. "Whatever comes," she said. "I won't be silent again." Ethan nodded once. "Neither will I." The fire burned on, steady and unafraid, as winter gathered its witnesses. The men came just after noon, when the light was clean enough to leave no doubt about what approached. Ethan heard them first, the deliberate creak of leather, the muted clink of metal, the sound of horses being guided rather than allowed to wander. He stepped onto the porch before they reached the fence, rifle resting against the doorframe, not raised. Snow lay bright and honest across the valley, offering nowhere for intention to hide. 3 riders stopped short of the posts. Their horses steamed in the cold. The man in front wore a wool coat, cut well enough to signal authority without ceremony. His eyes moved quickly, taking measure of the cabin, the stacked firewood, the cleared path to the door. "We're looking for a woman," he said. His voice carried easily in the still air. "She was cast out from her people during the storm. Some think she found shelter." Ethan did not turn his head. "Lots of storms," he said. "Lots of people don't." The man's gaze drifted to the window. The curtain hung still. "Mind if we check?" "I do," Ethan replied. A pause followed, long enough for winter to weigh in. Wind slid down from the ridge and passed through the trees with a low, unsettled sound. Behind Ethan, the door opened. Lena stepped onto the porch beside him. She did not wear a blanket. She did not shrink. The red cloth was tied around her wrist, bright against the winter light. Her posture was steady, her face composed, not defiant, simply decided. "You don't need to speak for me," she said. The men stiffened. The one in front narrowed his eyes. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "You were sent away." "I left," Lena replied calmly. "I was not taken. I was not stolen. I chose to walk." "That's not how we heard it." "Then you heard wrong," she said. "I owe you nothing." Ethan shifted his weight not to threaten, but to be seen. "You came for answers," he said. "You have them." The rider looked between them, calculating. He saw the rifle. Yes, but he also saw the way they stood, the way neither yielded space to the other. Winter taught men to read such things quickly. "This isn't over," the rider muttered. "It is for today," Ethan said. The horses turned. Snow kicked up beneath their hooves, then settled again as the men rode back the way they had come, their shapes shrinking into the valley until winter swallowed them whole. Only when the sound of hooves was gone did Lena's breath leave her in a single, trembling release. Her knees weakened. Ethan caught her without thinking, steadying her until the moment passed. Inside, the cabin felt smaller and safer. Ethan bolted the door more from habit than fear and set another log on the fire. Lena sat at the table, hands wrapped around a cup, her eyes unfocused for a moment as the weight of what had almost happened made itself known. "You didn't have to stand with me," she said quietly. "Yes," Ethan replied. "I did." That afternoon, he finished the small room he had started days before. He planed the last rough edge and fitted the door carefully, testing the hinge until it swung without complaint. Lena laid fresh blankets and set her few belongings in their places with deliberate care, as if arranging proof that the space was real. By dusk, the cabin held a different shape. They ate a simple meal together, no ceremony, no excess. The fire burned steady, its light warm against the dark pressing at the windows. Outside, the wind moved without conviction. Winter had spent itself for the day. Afterward, Ethan opened the door and let the cold air sweep through once, clearing the smoke and the fear alike. The sky had begun to lighten in the east, pale and honest. Lena joined him at the threshold. She rested a hand against the doorframe, then after a moment placed her other hand over her stomach. Not protectively, but thoughtfully. "I don't know what this year will bring," she said. Ethan looked out across the valley, where the snow glowed faintly under the first promise of dawn. "Neither do I." They stood there together as the light grew stronger, turning the world from gray to silver to white. The old year lay behind them, spent and unremarkable in its passing. Ethan reached up and took the silver ring from the nail near the window, turning it once in his hand before placing it back where it belonged, visible. Remembered. Chosen. The fire crackled behind them. The cabin breathed. The year changed quietly. Ethan looked at Lena, at the home that had stopped being shelter and become something earned, and said the words plainly, without irony or hesitation. "Happy New Year." Lena smiled, slow and real, and the valley received the sound as if it had been waiting for it all along.